Hello, everybody. Welcome to today's K2 webinar. Our topic today is seam clamps, seam roofs. I am Ronnie from K2 Technical Department, and with me today, our guest and expert, Christian Fürholzer from Solid Sea. Christian, welcome and thank you for being here.
Thanks, Ronnie, that I have the possibility to come and join with you the webinar and talk with you about standing seam and metal roofs.
Thank you. We are very happy to have you here because, today in the German webinar in the morning, we already could benefit from your knowledge and your expertise. So, we hope to offer you, dear participants, a variety of new information, and we hope that you also ask some questions. Coming to that, you have two ways to get in contact with us. It should be over there, something at the bottom of the screen. There is a Q&A panel and there is a chat panel. If you want to inform us, for example, that there is bad sound or bad video quality, please use the chat function. If you want to ask a question about our topic, about the seam clamps, if you have any questions concerning our topic today, please always use the Q&A function. That's very important because otherwise we might lose the overview and some questions might get missed. Thank you for that. So the program for today is that we first have a brief look on all our clamps we have at K2, and then we will take a specific look at the clamps from Christian's company Solid Sea. Those are the C-Fix clamps. They have a single point, a special point, which differs them from other clamps. And also, Christian brought us news about his clamp. After that, we will do, as always, planning with our clamps in base. So again, if you want to ask some question all the time, you can use the Q&A function, and depending on how well we get through the webinar, in the end, we might also have a quick, or we might also have an open question session where you can raise your virtual hand also down here somewhere, and then we can activate your microphone and you are welcome to ask your question audio-wise then. Okay, so I would say I start by presenting our clamps variety. I just want to get a little better view on what I show you. So if we can just get a little focus on this area of our table. Here you can see, I get my arm to get a little border. Here you can see all the clamps we have. I don't want to get too much into detail, but just some differences between these clamps. So here in the top line, you see 3 stainless steel clamps. All the other clamps are made of aluminum. All the clamps are no K2 products, so we only sell them. We buy them from suppliers who produce them. The only exception is this clamp. It's called the universal rib clamp. This is designed and developed by K2, and this fits on seams of KlipLok, different KlipLok seams, and maybe also other profiles, but in general, it's designed to fit on KlipLok. Coming back to all the other clamps, I said all the clamps are made of aluminum, and we will talk about the different seams where the clamps fit on. And first, I can show you these 3 clamps. They all fit on the normal classic double seam. Yeah, these 3 clamps. Thank you. And next row would be the round seams. So these 2 are designed for round seam, and you can already see here the round shape. Also, this one is made for round seams, and that one. And the last section here would be the clamps for the angle seams or snap seams. Let's have a look on the little K2 basics. Yeah, on seam roofs, as on, for example, tile roofs, there are 2 main rails or 2 rails which are used. And this is the solid rail, which you can always recognize that it has a channel on the bottom side, and the single rail, which has the channel on the side. And so the solid rail is always to be fixed from the bottom. And now I cannot find, no, this is the wrong one. It's too small. Do we have it? Yeah.
Yep.
So here, for example, or let's take this one. All the solid clamps have a long hole or a round hole, and this is there for the fixation of the solid rail on top. And for that, you need a M10
Hammer-headed.
Hammer? No.
Hammerhead.
Hammerhead. Bolt. T-bolt. Yeah, that's what I was. T-bolt. That's how we call it in the catalog. So, and then the T-bolt is inserted into the hole, and usually you turn around, you put the rail on top, and then you turn it around counterclockwise. And the challenge by doing that is that the T-bolt is properly turned around by 90 degrees. Sometimes it might happen that it's not turned around properly, and that means it won't fit. And the next problem is, yeah, that it's just difficult to install the rail on top of these clamps. So it's always easier to use the single rail, because the single rail gives you the opportunity to install from the side. This is not only on seam roofs, but also for tile roofs. It's the same thing. Solid rail, complicated to install from the bottom side. Single rail is much easier because you can adapt it from the side. So you save much money if you go for our single rail products in general. Not always is it possible, but in those cases where it is possible, I highly recommend to use the single rail family products. And the solutions for the single rail, if we talk about seam roofs, are these 3 clamps, and those are all C-fix clamps. And now, Christian, I would ask you to demonstrate how these clamps work on the seam samples.
Okay, I just take a sample of a double folded standing seam roof. Here you can see the double folding of the seam, And you can recognize here where the seam is folded, and our clamps for that type of seam have a nose at the bottom, and the nose has to be placed, I'll make it here, it's better, under these folded seam. So even if you pull with high strength, it might grab under the seam. Then the installation is pretty easy. You place the clamp on the position where it's needed, and you tighten the set screw with a torque of 18 Newton meters. We use a kind of set screw which is rounded at the top, and it will bring in the, deform a little bit the seam into a deepening on the other side of the clamp. This causes a little deformation and then the high strength of the clamp. After installing the clamps on the seam, normally orientated in this way, you can put the single rail on the clamp and just clip in the clip and tighten the nut. And then the installation is finished. Yep. So quick and easy.
Thank you very much, Christian. Really much easier than installing a solid rail, definitely. So you always save time. Sometimes the solid rail product might seem a little cheaper, but in most cases it's not more economic, but instead the single rail product will be more economic and sometimes also material wise cheaper or less price, let's say. Let's call it like that. We already have one question which might already fit in here. I'm not sure, but anyway, I will ask the question now. Christian, are you familiar with the Finnish ready-made standing seam roof products? For example, from the company Ruki and Metehe.
I know from these companies SnapLock seams.
SnapLock.
I know, I assume they produce also coils that the installer can make a double-folded seam profile for the roof, but in the Nordic countries, also a SnapLock file is very common.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
This SnapLock seam is wider. Has I have an old sample here. Can look
great.
like this, and SnapLock, because the right profile you place on the other one, just press down by foot, and it snaps in with it at this nose. And for this type of seam, we have a different clamp, which we can place here on. It has a 14 millimeter opening, and it fits over the snap lock, and you will tighten the seam, and then you can use this clamp for the rookie profiles.
Great.
So, yeah.
Thanks.
Can we switch to the single fold seam type?
Yeah, of course, of course. I just brought this question because I was thinking that maybe the rookie profile is also a double seam.
No,
but
no.
yeah, this fits perfect because it's the same clamp.
It's
right?
the same clamp.
Yeah.
We have on tilted roofs in Germany over 25 degrees such profiles called single folded, or in German Winkelfalz, Anglefalz, where you have normally a width of about 12 millimeters on top, and with the same clamp we use for the snap lock files, we can work on this profile. It fits over the single fold, and you just tighten, as you know, with 80 Newton meters, and then install easily your single rail. That's all.
Okay, great. And one information I might add is that the first clamp we got to know from the first C-fix clamp we got to know from Solid C is a clamp which is compatible with a single rail, and also this second clamp is compatible with a single rail. But as you can see here, this is the same clamp family, and so this clamp is the only one which we as K2 are selling also as a solid rail variation, which you can also see here. It's just the same clamp here and there, but this one has the adapter plate on top, so that you could also fix the solid rail as we saw before here on top. Yeah. So Christian, and then there is one other clamp left, right?
Yep.
Which we haven't seen yet.
That's a clamp for the round seam or barbed seam type with producers very common, the Kalzip, BMO, or Kingspan. There we have a special clamp with 2 screws. We deliver it with the screws turned out, so you can easily put the clamp over the seam. Please tighten first the screw with the head. This will mark the middle of the seam and the middle of the clamp, and then tighten with the required torque of 18 Newton meters the set screw. And then you can do it with a torque wrench, but you know what to do. And you have easily the base to mount the single rail on the clamp.
Great, thank you. So, yeah, maybe before we come to our next point, we take the chance to answer 2 questions. One of them, I'm not really sure if I understand it, but the question is, what should we do if the clamp does not hook on the seam? Can we still use such clamp? So as I understand, I would also use the clamps we have here to explain or to answer. So if we compare this clamp, this is the stainless steel clamp I already presented before. And then we have two other clamps. This one is the S5 clamp, and then here the C-fix clamp. You can see this S5 and the C-fix clamp, they are wider. So this clamp is only to be used for a seam thickness of 3.5 millimeter. If you have a seam which is thicker than 3.5 millimeter, this clamp must not be used, but instead one of these clamps which can be used on seams up to 7 millimeters. If you have more than 7 millimeters, I don't know, maybe you don't have a double seam clamp, but another kind of seam, double standing seam, but another kind of seam. Or it is a double folded seam, but of any reason it is thicker, then
use this one.
This one, yeah.
This one.
This has an opening of
14
millimeters.
14 millimeters.
Okay. So I hope this answers the question. I hope I interpreted the question in the right way. Then we have another question concerning maintenance. How often is this clamp to be checked to keep the torque? You just mentioned the torque of, I think, 18 Newton meters. Is it necessary to check the
It's
torque?
impossible to check.
It's impossible.
It's impossible. The clamp is positioned under the modules, and in reality, we have aluminium used for the clamp, and the aluminium will react a little bit with the atmosphere and produces aluminium oxide on the surface, and this makes it tighten. This fixes a little bit more the screw.
So no need to re-torque. Okay. Yeah, then there is another question, but I think we don't mention this question now because I think this is exactly the point we will talk very soon about. So let's first go back to the C-fix clamps. Christian, you brought us news concerning your clamps today.
Yeah. We have tested very broadly our clamps, and finally we got from the DIBT in Germany a general approval of the clamp. And we have this approval for the double folded seam clamp, the DS clamp, or a single, you term it K2.
The clamp, the C-fix clamp for the
double
folded seam. I think we call it the single seam clamp.
Single seam clamp, yeah. We got a DIBT approval, which is very special compared to some load tests which are published by other producers. In Germany, if you get approval for such a product, it will take in mind not only the place of the clamp on a seam, but the whole system. So they test not only the failure of the clamp of the seam on the seam, but also the complete system, including the cladding, the profile as well. And if you just pull here, you will get a pretty high strength of the clamp, which will be more than 5 kN. But in our approval, there's only written 1.6 kN. Why? The reason is they take in mind the failure of the seam profile as well. And this is the weaker part compared the connection of the clamp to the seam. And this might show us the way to the next often discussed topic. Can I skip seams when I mount clamps on such a roof? I recommend to skip no seams, because the strength of the whole system is depending on the seam itself. And the seam and the fixing of the seam to the wooden structure is the bottleneck, the weak point. And so we recommend to go on each seam. If we go back into the history of the metal roof cladding with the standing seam roof seam types, you can see these claddings on old buildings like churches, for example. They are on the roof for decades, centuries. In former times, they only had to resist the wind and the snow. In the last decades, we began to build on the seams. Had we in former times, we only had the wind and the snow, spread it load. Now, with the modules and the rails and the clamps, we transfer the spreaded load to a point load, which we bring in to the roof just where the clamp is placed. And all the spread load is concentrated here. So we have to spread again. And this we can do to fix on each seam. The roof itself is fixed to the wooden structure with clips, with small stainless clips like these. This is a typical example for that. It's designed for screws, but you also can find these clips just for nails. They are nailed or screwed on the wooden structure. And for the thermal elongation, you have such sliding clips with a fixed part and a sliding part. And this small stainless part is only clipped in the fixed part. And this is a weak point in the whole construction of the metal seam roof. These clips are placed at the seam at least every 50 centimeters. And a lot of cases much more narrow. And we would skip now seams with a clamp. We would transfer a load to the roof, which is too much for these clips. This type of clip can take a load of about 0.4 kN, such much better clips up to 1 kN, and one German producer's Protectum has a clip, you can see it's much more material, much more strength, more than 1 kN. And if we can come here with a clamp and transfer the ultimate load of 5 kN, it's much too much for this type of clip. So spread again the load, go on each seam, and in the zone of where you have more wind load at the edge or at the corner, even you might install a dirt rail just to spread the load.
So if I understood that right, for example, you have 5 of those clips, but now you could use, let's say, 2 of our clamps or 1 of our clamps. If you take 2, maybe one is close to 3 of the clips and the other one is close to other 2 of the clips. But if you only take 1, clamp, it is only near to two of the clips, and the other three clips, they don't have any work to do. So everything is concentrated to two of these clips.
Yeah.
And that means, yeah, if some strong wind comes, it only pulls these two clips, and the other two clips are kind of bored and, yeah, don't have any work to do.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. Oh, the Scandinavian guys, you probably know these type of clip. It's from Sweden. So, and I know a lot of roofs are installed with such clips, and that is pretty good.
Okay, so yeah, we have the certification now, the German certification. So this product is officially uh, certified after German standards. Of course, this is only official for the German market, but I think it's anyway it's a sign of quality, which might also give you safety for the usage of these clamps in other countries. Okay. Now, what is a question which is asked very often in our technical sales daily business at K2 is the question which clamp to use on a Kalzip roof. Kalzip is a big manufacturer of round seam roofs, round seam profiles worldwide, and Kalzip has own clamps, and one of these clamps we also have at K2. We sell it, and you also can calculate projects. You can plan projects with our calculation software K2 Base using this clamp. Now there are some clamps on the market which do fit on the Kalzip round seam profile, but I know from my daily business that Kalzip, they don't like other clamps to be used on their roofs. So Christian, maybe can you show the difference between the original Kalzip clamp and your clamp, and give us yeah, just answer or tell us if your clamp can also uh, be used. Is it allowed to use your clamp?
Yeah. So we have an official approval for our clamp on a Kalzip type of roof. So it's okay, but Kalzip, as a manufacturer of this profile and who has also their own clamps, of course, they like to install their clamp. What is the difference between our clamp and the Kalzip clamp? If I place the clamp on the seam and tighten this M6 screw, you can see the Kalzip clamp just fixes on the bulb of the seam. We fix down under the bulb. That's a big difference, and there's a point where you really have to pay attention. I go back to the point how the roof is fixed to the structure. Here I take a clip which is used to fix these bulb type of seam profiles on the roof. Such clips, which you can get in different heights. It's a small one. And the seam is installed around this clip. These profiles might have a big length, and so you will have the thermal elongation. and the profiles can slide over these clips. If you install our clamp on such a clip, you will hinder the thermal elongation. Please don't do that. Please keep away from the clip by placing the clamp on the seam, that you don't hinder the thermal elongation. Normally, we recommend a distance of about 10 to 15 centimeters away from the clip. Then all is fine and the profile can move. Yo. And then again, the installation of the rail is a little bit easier if you use just the clip than compared to the T-bolt screw on that type of Kalzip clamp.
So to sum that up, the advantage of the Kalzip clamp is that you can place it everywhere, and the advantage of your clamp is, well, you cannot place it everywhere. You
Yep.
must keep away a little bit, but the clamp itself has stronger resistance.
Yes.
So,
yep.
And of course, it can be used with a single rail.
Yep. The clips, the position of the clips, you will get normally out of the plan where they are marked and they are installed pretty regularly. Normally parallel to the eave or to the ridge or diagonally over the roof, but always in a line. So if you have two, you have also the rest. And you can see the principle of installation of the clip. And please keep a little bit away of the clips.
Okay, great. Thank you, Christian. So I would say, yeah, please.
The last time we had a discussion, can I see the clips?
Yeah.
On a
interesting question, yeah.
Installed roof. If you have an older roof where you don't have any documentation where the clips are placed, you normally can see it. If you look a little bit down to the roof, not from the top, there are some positions where it's a little bit darker or lighter because it's not so dirty or more dirty at that position. And you can see it, trust me.
Yeah, that's very interesting. Indeed, I saw pictures of which you sent me, and even on the picture, you could really see where the clips are just by the color and the shadowing and the dirt of the roof. So it was really, yeah, it was a surprise for me that it's really possible to see the position of the clips without seeing the clip itself. Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you. Then before I go over to my computer to do a base calculation, I would like to have another look on the double folded seam, because the participant who asked which clamp to use if the clamp does not fit. So that was when I was explaining that different thicknesses of seams means that you have to use different clamps. So the question was precised a little bit, and it is about this little nose. You can see a nose here this way on the inside of on one side of the clamp. And the question now was if this nose does not fit. So again, I'm not sure if I understand it right, but how can it happen that this nose does not fit? I think there is only one option. This is when the seam itself is too high. So the part of the seam which is folded is not like here, maybe 8 or 9 millimeters. I don't know, or
There
10.
are there are some types, some few types of seam profiles which look a little bit like a double folded standing seam roof, but it's a type of snap lock. And then please use this snap seam and it will work. It will fit over the seam and you can tighten with a set screw.
So there is a lot of misunderstanding when you look at the different seam times we have on the market. So sometimes, as you said, we have something which looks um, on the first view, it looks like a double folded seam, but instead it is a snap seam. Um, a good way is always just to go on the roof with with all the clamps and check which one fits. Another, this is not on our schedule, but maybe we can quickly talk about it. Another often occurring misunderstanding we have when we take a look at this profile. This is a profile from a company called Zambelli, and the product is called Ribroof 465. And many customers come to us and they ask, oh, I have a trapezoidal metal sheet, and now I need a solution for a trapezoidal metal sheet, which would be our K2 mini clamp or, sorry, mini rail or multi rail or basic rail. But you must know that this is not a trapezoidal metal sheet. It is um, yeah, a seam roof, if you
Yeah.
want to call it like that. And when customers tell me, okay, I have a crest width of only, I don't know, 15 millimeters or something like that, and I have a crest distance of 23.5, something like that, I already know, yeah, this is a Zambelli rib roof 465, because 465 is the width of the whole panel. And so half of 465 is something around 23.5 centimeters. And if somebody tells me I have a trapezoidal metal roof with a crest distance of 23.5, I immediately know, okay, this is not a trapezoidal metal roof. So it's really, this is a really hard topic because um, you must have some experience, which I also don't have in that depth, but yeah, a little bit I already know. So um, it is very important to talk about what type of roof you have before you start planning, before you start buying the material. Uh, Please always figure out what kind of roof and what kind of seam you have so that you get the right material in the end and right planning. Okay, so I would say I go over there, leave you alone, and plan a base project. So we see here our website. Um, when you come to the website, it might be in different languages. Most times it is already in English. Now it is in German, but you can always change language by going on this little globus up here and then just choose, for example, English. We now want to go to our base software, and we can reach base directly by clicking on K2 base up here, or by starting our My K2 dashboard, which you can reach by clicking on this little yeah, icon of a human head and shoulders. Um, and if you do so, you will be on my K2, the starting page. And this is our dashboard where you can reach all our digital services, like, for example, the price estimator, K2 training, which I really recommend if you want to get into all the K2 um, information to get K2 world better. And so here you have K2 Base, the calculation software. I already have that opened here and started to plan a project in Antwerp, Belgium. No, that's not Antwerp. Sorry, that's Heathrow. That's the airport uh, in Antwerp we were before. Um, in this webinar, I don't want to go through the calculation step by step. Just give a quick overview and give a few important hints to some specific topics, because the very, very basics you find, for example, in our introductional videos on our YouTube channel. You will find there, I don't know, maybe 7 different videos. All in all, maybe 20 or 30 minutes, which give you a really good introduction into planning with K2 Base. I already prepared the location here, entered the address, and gave the project a name. And now I want to add this this piece of land, this maps, Google Maps area into my project. But before, I want to switch languages because we are again in German language. So I go on the top right side to this item, and then I go to Einstellungen, which is settings in English. And here I can switch to English and many other languages. Okay, now we are back at the project, still in German. Interesting. Maybe I reload the page. Let's see what happens then. Nothing. Okay. Okay. I pressed the wrong save button because I thought it is something else. So then let's go on a new project again. Heathrow Airport. Now I hope we'll find the roof from before again. Here it is. So this is the roof we want to make a planning. I press on add again. And don't forget to save from time to time. As we are in Great Britain, we already have a wind map here based. No, we can go on automatic, and then we should have the wind speed calculated automatically. I don't know why this did not work from the beginning on, but so I have the location, and in Great Britain, as in many other European countries, we have the automatic load calculation based on the zip code and based on the location. So we have a wind load of a wind speed of 22 meters per second and a snow load of 0.5 kilonewton per square meters. Because this field has a red surrounding, we know that we have to choose one option here. So in this case, it is, I would say, country terrain or town terrain. I'm not sure. So I press the question mark, which gives me a little more information. Unfortunately, again, in German. Don't ask me why, because my basic settings, I know, because my basic settings here in K2 are in German. So we go to settings again. Let's see what happens now. Maybe it helps. Let's save the project, load the page again. Still in German. So sometimes I don't know why base is behaving how it behaves. So now I think I would choose something between a landscape like this or a landscape like this. I can go back to project, zoom out a little bit, and I would say I definitely have both here. I have buildings, but I also have flat area. So I would rather go for terrain category 2, country terrain. Special thing in English, in England, I have to enter a distance to the shoreline, to the sea. But to be honest, I don't know. Here, let's say London is around, yeah, let's just say 100 kilometers from the shoreline. Go on continue. And now we have a gable roof. So we have many gable roofs next to each other. In this webinar, I only want to plan one of them. I go on add. Sometimes the zoom is destroyed a little bit. So let's just start planning one of these roofs like this. I first draw the eaves, and then I go to the ridge. In the end, I enter building height and a roof pitch. And yeah, special about the seam roofs is that I have to choose a seam type. And as you can see here, we have a variety of different seam types. And some of them we already mentioned before, like, for example, the Kalzip round top seam. It can be important that you choose the right seam, because if you do so, if you choose, for example, the Kalzip seam, then you will only have clamps in the end which have a round shape and can be used on Kalzip. But if you just use double fold seam, you only have the double fold seam clamps. So no round clamps in the end of this calculation if we choose double fold seam. You must enter the seam distance. You can also enter seam thickness and seam height, but it is not necessary. Only the fields with the red surrounding are really to be filled out. Also important is the roof material you choose. We have aluminum, steel, titanium, zinc, and stainless steel. Let's just do a calculation with aluminum for the beginning and go on continue. I directly switch to design and choose a module. The modules I've used in the last calculations are still here, very quickly and easy to choose. to select. So I go on continue, and then we said that single rail is easier to install. So of course I choose single rail because I want to save time and money. And then I choose an option of all the other three fields and go on add. And now I can just draw a module field. Does not have to be perfect in the beginning, because in a second step, I can still move it around on the roof. I can make it smaller or larger by just using the mouse, or I can only go into the 2D view and say, okay, I don't want to have 2 rows of modules, but instead I want to have 4, 2 additional on top. And as you can see, we have 35 modules in a row, 7 blocks, 5 modules each. And then we have a yellow line, and the yellow line shows us the thermal gap. That means that you are not allowed to build larger module blocks than 5 modules in a row. The maximum allowed module block length or rail length is 6 meter and 50. And indeed, when we go to results and click on one of these rails, then we see rail details here, and we see that the rail length is 5 meters and 85, 1 module more, and we would have around 7 meters almost, and that is too much. That's why the thermal gap is occurring here after the 5th module. If we go back to design and choose the thermal gap section here, it's the right, the third one of these horizontal icons. That's the thermal gap section. I can see here the vertical separation takes place after 5 modules, and it's not possible to put a higher value here, like 6 modules. As soon as I want to confirm this by clicking somewhere or using the tabulator key, it jumps back to 5 modules. So 5 modules is the maximum. But I want to go back to roof and show you what would happen. Now, first I go to design and I delete the module field. Last thing I want to show, when I go to roof and I choose titanium zinc, that's very important. If you have a titanium zinc roof, please use this roof material from the beginning on. You then go to design and draw another module field, then you will see that the thermal separation is already after every second modules. That is because titanium zinc is a very soft and yeah, I don't know, material which is not so resistant when you have a thermal elongation of the aluminum rail, and this rail will always uh, push and pull on the seam. Then the titanium zinc seam would not like that, and that's why we have another rule for the thermal separation when it comes to titanium zinc. So let's go back to the results page. We see everything is in order. The project we planned can be built like that. We now have the single standing seam clamp C fix. That's the one we wanted to have. Then we have a single rail, we can choose a different rail length, like for example, 3 meter 30 instead of, or 2 meter 50 would also be enough. Yeah. And yeah, that's it. If we go to summary, we have a complete article list, and the planning is ready so far. So I will have another look on our questions. We have one question which refers to to something I explained in the beginning. So I will go over again to our camera. The question is, I mentioned that there are cases where it's not possible to use a single rail, and where you have to use a solid rail. So for example, if you have one of these special profiles, for example, the Zambelli rib roof 465, or another one of the Zambelli, then we have to use the clamps which come from the company Zambelli itself. Also, for example, Domico, Christian, I don't know if Domico, it's an Austrian company,
Yes.
as far as I know, how international they are, but they also, for example, they have their own clamps, and if you are forced to use one of their clamps, then you would also find a horizontal
elongated hole.
Yeah, a horizontal elongated hole. Yeah, of course. And you will have to place a solid rail on top. I mean, there would be another option. Also, when you have, for example, a tile roof, there might be some special tiles which we only have solutions compatible with a solid rail for. But theoretically, you always have the possibility to take another additional item. You cannot plan with this item in K2 base, but you can order this item in addition. It's the L adapter set. The L adapter always comes like this with a little T-bolt at the side and with another bolt, which I don't find at the bottom, but you can remove the other. No, you can't. I messed it up. So here it is. So you would take this bolt and just place it onto that clamp, and then again it would be possible to use the single rail, fixing it to that T-bolt you can see here. I hope this answers the question.
Yep. I saw in the meantime there comes up a question to the material of the double folded standing seam roof with the copper.
Ah.
Yeah.
Where is this question? I can't find it.
It
was in the chat. Okay,
okay.
That's why I could not see it.
Let's imagine this is not an aluminium, but a copper roof. Then we can't use directly on that seam the aluminium clamp, because aluminium and copper, there's a reaction, and we have to separate the copper from the aluminium. And we do this by insert which we place on the seam, and upon this, the aluminium clamp, we separate the copper from the aluminium, and all is fine with that inlay. And may I talk a little bit about the titanium zinc and the thermal elongation?
Yes.
The difference between the titanium zinc and aluminium, stainless, or copper roofs is that the titanium zinc is not very flexible at lower temperatures. There's also a minimum temperature at installation of titanium zinc. Today we have temperatures of about 1 or 2 degrees here in Germany, and you are not allowed to install right now titanium zinc. It's too cold because it might crack if you bend.
Okay.
And this is the reason that we have to limit the length of the rail crossed normal to the seam. Because, yeah, it might happen, the elongation at lower temperature, where the titanium zinc is not very flexible, and you might get a crack over here. So we have to limit the movement of the rail, and this we can only do by shorten it.
Okay.
That's the reason you have a difference between titanium zinc and aluminium or other material in the length of your rail.
Okay. Yeah, thank you very much. Christian, I would now ask the participants to ask more questions if they want. We can give them the chance to ask their questions via audio. Maybe in the meantime, while we wait whether someone will ask a question, maybe you can present your last product you brought with you today.
Yep. You mentioned before Domico, the Austrian producer of profiled seam types. And Domico has 2 profiles. One is the GBS and the other is the Domitec. And for the Domitec, the more modern one of the both profiles, we developed such a clamp which can be easy installed over the seam and then just tighten it. It's a different clamping principle compared to the other products from us. We have 2 parts which are pressed together, but it's the only way for this type of seam. It's our K15, and you can use it on Domitec, but as well on some KlipLok or other profiles. And how to go to work further, you showed us the possibilities. You can work with an adapter plate, you can work with the angle, and even we have something to install our clip for the single rail at that clamp.
Ah, great,
Yeah.
Great. So yeah, very important to that last product. Christian brought that today and presented it to you, but it's important to know that this clamp, the last one for the Domitec roofs, is not available via K2. So it's only available directly from Solid C. I think our colleague Klaus, who is the director of today's webinar, already put the website of Solid C in the chat. So just have a look or use your search engine to search for Solid C or C-Fix clamps. Great. So it seems there are no other questions. Oh, one is popping in. What if we have snap seam, but with two big angles like pyramid. It spits out the clamp. What solution? You can two a snap seam. Like
Yeah,
a snap seam which is not like that, but like this. I suppose that's the question. And then it
we have to look at the special seam. Might be there are some seam types where we don't have a solution.
mm.
That might happen.
So that's what I mentioned before. Sometimes it's really necessary to just go on the roof with 3 or 4 different clamps and just put the clamps on the seam and check whether it fits or not. Maybe for this type of seam, a snap seam, which has
Pyramid.
a low angle, yeah, pyramid angle. Maybe also a clamp like the last one would fit. You must just check that out. You can never say it just in general. Okay, so this one was the last question for today. At this point, I want to say goodbye for today. We have another poll in the end. We would really appreciate if you answered some more question. Klaus, is that right? Do we have another poll? Yeah. So we have another poll. If you answer some more questions, it helps us to improve the quality of our webinars and to offer you the content which is important for you. Um, Next week, next Wednesday, we have tile roofs as topic for our webinar, and a tile roof with a focus on a specific roof shape, which also occurs on other uh, roofings like trapezoidal metal or also seam roofs, but the topic is hipped roofs. So that's from my side today. Thank you for participating. Thank you very much, Christian, for being here today and give us insight in all your knowledge and helping us out with our questions. It was really interesting for me. I really learned a lot again, and I hope and I'm sure our participants did as well. Thank you very much, Christian.
Ronnie, thanks that I can participate here. It was a pleasure for me.
For me too. Thank you. Goodbye all together. See you
Bye.
next week.